Okay, this week we're going to be going over arrays and PHP arrays. The in class is on PHP uploads, doing that. The way PHP uploads work though, you're going to have to host it on your external site to see it work. It won't work on development platform, only on external for PHP upload. So your code can be fine, and I'll actually show you an example of doing it local host and then external both. Just the way PHP uploads work, has to be done on an external site coming in. So I actually have up here on the overhead a working example mapped out to week 6 in class, and I'll go ahead and grab a JPEG. It has to have a extension to it. This one's a PNG extension, but as far as storage, where it stores that file at, remember if it's an uploads, yeah, there it is, and there's the one that I actually uploaded tonight, these here. And so as you upload images or whatever, it's unsecure, as you can see. You can upload anything to the file, so we'll talk about that. One of the things that I recommend if you're going to do uploads on your PHP site is to have a security wrapper like we talked about last week on authentication into a page, making sure that page is secure. Last week and week before, actually, the 3 lines of code to secure a site using login credentials, and then you can secure an upload page. But upload in and of itself is fairly insecure, the actual logic for it. So we'll go over that, and then we'll go over the take-home, which is looks like this here, doing an arrays, single dimension array and a multi-dimensional array, and how they're used in PHP. And your job to take home basically is just to modify the colors. You might be familiar with hexadecimal colors in HTML. You'll basically go to any HTML website that shows you hexadecimal colors, and you guys can manipulate and find your own colors for those and fill them in. But we want to do some reading here first on arrays, and before we get started, just a real quick overview of arrays. We've went over arrays a little bit in here already, but this whole week is on arrays as far as the in class and take home, so we're going to cover that. So PHP arrays, basically they provide a way to group together variables in your app. Arrays can be referenced and manipulated using a single variable name. Array elements, different than other initializations, start with a 0 element, and they are usually called array elements are used to call each array within an application. To initialize array, you use the array with left and right parentheses function. The array function allows 0 or more elements to be assigned. So to initialize an array called RVC classes, you would create in a PHP wrapper, RVC classes equals array, semicolon. Now, one thing I do recommend as far as naming arrays is having in it a prefix and a post, kind of like this one here, RVC, and then classes. Because usually in an app like this, you'll have multiple arrays for multiple uses. So you might have RVC classes, RVC students, RVC, subjects, RVC events, whatever. So RVC would be like the lowercase RVC would be like the predominant de facto name for arrays for this app. Okay, that makes sense. And so RVC would be something you'd use. So anytime you saw an RVC, by default that's an array. RVC lowercase. That's how I do my programming with PHP anyway. It seems to work. Whereas we've talked about so far up to this point, all arrays that you initialize should be lowercase, except for arrays that are going to be that are constants, can be all caps. But for the most part, everything's going to be lowercase, except for arrays. I like to add in like a prefix for the app type of name. So if it's an RVC app, PHP app, I call it RVC, and then whatever that class is for, I call it in there classes, but it could be courses, it could be instructors. So this is just an empty array. There's nothing in it. We're just initializing it. So if we wanted to initialize it with some values, here's what we would do. We would take same array class we created earlier, but add into it with quotes and commas some content. So web290 would be 0, CS102 would be 1, PCT130 would be 2 for that array. So when we would call these classes, or call this array, we call 0, 1, or 2 to call those unique names or unique places in the array. So just remember, the big thing to remember, it's not real big, but you guys probably know if you've taken other languages, the arrays start with 0. And so after your declaration, if I wanted to echo out the 0 element, this is what I would do in my code. I would do an echo statement, call the class array name, and then in brackets, the placement of that array. In this case, 0, and it would pull out an echo statement for web290 for an echo. Do I know? I'm sorry, what was that?
An array,
Yeah.
can you actually do a call to a database?
You can do a call, but you can actually insert read databases and insert them into an array. Definitely do that all the time. And so after you've loaded from a MySQL statement, like say a select statement, and you want to dump them all in to an array. In fact, I think in week 3 or 4 when we did the membership, or no, the guest book, it uses an array to blow that up. Yeah, definitely. Associate array is useful for assigning meaningful names, so can be used to access, can use names to access the array itself. So say you have in this example an associate array, RBC classes, but notice after the equal sign, you have array, and then PHP in quotes equals greater than symbol web290, comma, computer basics in quotes equal greater than symbol CS102, comma, security in quotes equal greater than symbol PCT130, end quote. To reference these, you would just reference the class name for that array, which in this case is all RBC classes, and then the name of the element instead of the number of the element. That makes sense? So we have RBC classes PHP, RBC classes computer basics, RBC classes security. So naming using an associate naming mechanism is nice when you're, if you had multiple arrays for multiple uses throughout your application. This might be an easy way to remember versus the object 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. So that's an associate array. Multi-dimensional array is each element, array element, in and of itself is an array. So it gets a little bit more difficult here in a multi-dimensional. We know first single dimension, now we're into multi-dimension. It can be thought of as a table. So what does every table have? Every table has two items intrinsic to every table. It's got one of this and one of this. Multiple
rows and columns.
Multiple rows and columns. So think of a multi-dimensional array as multiple rows and columns as an array. And so each element of the parent array represents a row. Each element of a child array represents the columns in the row. Okay? So here's an example of a multi-dimensional array. You've got a multi-dimensional array, RBC classes is what we're calling it. Plug it in with just an empty array there on the first line. The second, third, and fourth line, 0, 1, and 2, bring in content of that array. 0, notice it has 2 columns in here. It's got title web290 and subject PHP. The next one is title CS102, subject computer basics, title PCT130, subject network security. So to call these, we just call the actual multi-dimensional part that we want to call. So in this one, say we just wanted the name of the class, but not the name and number. We would call like title, which would be the web290 CS102 or PCT130. Or we could also call subject, either one, for multi-dimensional. And so what you can think of is each one of these refers as, each one of these arrays, 0, 1, and 2, the first object would actually be, you could think of it as a row and a column. Okay, row and a column for each one of these. Here's some more example here of how you could use it, multi-dimensional. The same one we did earlier up here at the top, initialized. Plug it into a table border, rock band, song 1, song 2, song 3, and then do a for each loop to loop through that array and populate the table. So let's see what that one looks like actually. I'm going to copy this code and we'll plug it in. I'll bring up Text Wrangler and we'll plug it in here. In fact, let me play with our new toy here we have, which is I've been using quite a bit, is the our shiftedit.net we've been playing with. So let me dump it in here. I'll create a new PHP page in here. We'll do it this way. I know some of you are starting to use this, so we'll go ahead and play with it. This is the announcement I made a few weeks back on the service that Adam uses. I know some of you are using this already. I'm just creating a new PHP file, and I'm going to go ahead and copy that or paste that code I put in here earlier. Make sure I've got my references here correct, coming in right. On line 9 it says I have an error I shouldn't have because of the PHP wrapper. Sometimes question marks don't come over right. Let's see what else I'm missing here. Oh, I know what it is. These quotes. These are all going to be wrong. Let's see if Adam's replace feature works good. Find replace. Don't see it. So I'm going to have to manually do it. Yay! It's okay. So let me go in here and do these real quick. And I copied that from the PDF. That's why I did that. I'm going to and as you see on the kickout on this, what it's going to look like should represent, because we're going to do a loop for each loop, which will loop through each row. And how many rows? Each row has 2 columns in this example, title column and subject column basically. And just like in an Excel spreadsheet, you know how an Excel spreadsheet has the header title at the very top? So you could say subject and title would be the header, for title would be the column 1, subject would be the column 2 header. That makes sense. So that's basically how you can think of it here. Once I get all these replaced here, right? This one there. All right, good. So his syntax thing works though. Caught it. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and copy that and go to another page. Okay, so here's my rock band, song 1, song 2, song 3. I don't have anything for song 2 or song 3, but it's in there. The columns are in there. But I can go back in here and manipulate this now that I've got code in here actually. So I can actually do, instead of rock band, we'll do classes. And make sure I got that right. Be classes, and then we'll say, we'll do, let's see, title, and maybe, I don't know, we'll do week 1, week 2 instead of song 2, song 3. We'll do that. So this is going to be title, and in here I'm going to put in week 1, and here I'm going to put in week 2. I'm going to have to add in some more content in my subject here. So here's going to be week 1 equals greater than symbol test. I'll copy that. The next ones. So that's week 1, and then we'll do week 2. So all I've done is I've added two more columns basically for 0, 1, and 2. So we'll see what that does here. Let me save that. Reload it. Save it first. Here we go. So I've got my classes, title, week 1, week 2. See how that works? And so basically it's populating that table that I created in code, and it's basically doing it here in this last for each loop. It's for each loop, RVC classes as RVC class. Now RVC class, you'll notice, does not exist. It's just an object that's being used in the for each. Okay, so it's for every time a row occurs in RVC classes, basically, it's going to come through here, and notice there is a echo statement for tr, which is a row, then another for each loop. What that's going to do is loop the actual row, okay? And in this case, you're going to have 0, 1, 2, and 3. Yep. Yeah, I've tried to. Let's see here. It's kind of hard on this browser. Let me see if I can do it.
Now, when you use, I mean, this is a little off topic, but for each loop, when do you use like RVC classes as key value? When is that appropriate?
When you use what now?
Like RVC classes as key value. You know what I'm talking about? Where you'll have like the object RVC class, but then you'll have the equal sign forward or greater
Yeah.
than, and then you'll have value.
Yeah, you can have a value there.
Well, when is it appropriate to use that? What's the difference between the two?
Well, it depends upon the content that you're going to use it for. If it's a numeric content or if it's a string content. For PHP purposes, for the array, it's going to have to be a string content, but if this was being populated, like say from a database or something, it could have anything in there as, instead of having a string content, you could actually have like say a post, it could be a post statement. It could be a post statement brought in from a form, brought in from another form as an example. So it wouldn't have to be hard-coded whatever. It could be brought in from a post. It could be brought in from after you've read a SQL select statement.
Yeah.
You're brought in that way. And so,
Would you say 95% of the time, like that's the typical structure for each?
yeah, definitely. And one of them I want to mention was this one has two for each loops. It's got a nest one. I cannot expand it, sorry. But it is recorded, so you can pull it up later. But notice this with a for each here, and then a for each. It's a nested one. You generally don't want to go more than one deep on a for each because it's just too confusing to do. You can do it though, you know, but normally you want to keep it within a two structure. Also, within arrays, I keep it at no more than 3 or 4 columns in an array. If it goes beyond that, create another array type, array name, that will help you organize that better. That makes sense? And so, not to say there's times where I've had to go beyond that, but it's not, if you have control over from the beginning of the creation of an array, you don't want to go beyond 3 or 4 columns, and you definitely don't want to go beyond one nested for each loop, because it gets really confusing beyond 2. You can do it, I've done it, but it's more confusing to do it that way. And so one thing I want you to remember here is this. This first for each loop is the row, okay? Each row, one at a time, 0, 1, and 2. So this would be the row information, okay? The second for each loop is looping the columns within the row. So the first one, well, all three of them, 0, 1, and 2, all have 0, 1, 2, and 3 placements for arrays within that one array name. And so if you can remember that, row and column, the first for each is a row, the second for each is a column. Now the other thing to remember is the as statement for both. The first one's RBC class, the second one's item. Doesn't matter what you call it at all, but do make sure it makes something that makes sense for that array or for that for loop, if that makes sense. So this first one's the class name. The second one's the items within the classes. Okay, the items within the classes, which in this case would be subject, week 1, week 2. Okay, and so just make sure they're meaningful. But as far as, I guess, the most confusing part of the two nested for each or nested for each is students always want to know, well, how do you know what to call this here? This and this. Doesn't matter. It's just an object. That's all it is. It's an empty object. And just make sure it makes sense to that row and it makes sense to those columns in general, generic sense. If that makes sense. And then you'll notice those as statements are used, okay, inside of the for loop, for each loop. So the RBC class is used here to loop again. Okay, so within that, it's looping 0, 1, 2, 3. And then site, or item, I'm sorry, item is echoed out each time for the TD column row, the column item within the row. TR would be a row, TD would be a column. So once you do it the first time, and I suggest doing it just like I did it here. Take that PDF file at home that we were looking at here, copy it, bring it into your text editor, or you can do it through the PHP editor like I did, through shiftedit.net, or you can do it through Text Wrangler, whatever, manipulate it. And then once you manipulate a working example, then you're going to get it, once you manipulate it for your own purposes, okay? And do that 2 or 3 times, manipulating it, and then try to create one from scratch without looking at the example a couple times. And so the more you do that, it becomes second nature as far as creating those arrays. Does that make sense? And then you can keep those examples in your library, because if you don't use an array for 6 months, you're going to have to go back and reference multi-dimensional arrays. You're going to have to, and that's no problem. That's what the references are for. So don't feel bad in that. But at least you understand the logic of what it is you're looking for and how to manipulate it to get the results that you need. And in programming, regardless of what language is, we always do that as programmers. What I mean by that, I always do that, all programmers. I program in PHP every week. I program in ASP.NET every week. I program in iOS development each week. I program in Windows development each week. That's a lot of development platforms. But each week, yeah, each week, and I'm not complaining because I get paid for it. And so, but each week I have to look back at prior projects I've had to help me with current projects each week, regardless of what. So I'll tell you that to let you know, if I'm going to have to do it, and I've been doing this for a while, and my brain power is probably getting lesser and lesser, you guys are going to have to do it as well. And one of the websites that I recommend, in fact, I have it here for one of my other courses that I recommend, that it's for all development platforms, actually, that you can use this for. In fact, I think I have it on my, let's go back. I've got it. If you go to cconkle.com, you can go there real quick. Go to cconkle.com, and at the very top of my site, there's courses link, and the one that, it's under iOS course resources, iOS course resources. Now, most of this definitely is going to be for iOS development, but the one I want to recommend here is this Stack Overflow website, this #1 source for iOS developers. I say it's the #1 source for all developing languages. In fact, if I click on that right now, I think I've got it sourced to Objective-C, but I can actually source it to anything. I can come in here and source it to find a PHP acronym here. I think they just do PHP on it, actually. There's 448,451 PHP tags. These are actually code examples, code questions from PHP developers. And so once you put in a tag, you don't have to put in a tag, by the way. You can just type in PHP Arrays. But if you just type in, like, say, type in arrays, for an example, that word arrays that we just went over. I use this for all my development platform. I submit examples that I've created. I get help from programmers that have put out examples. And so, like for instance, this here, if you wanted to learn how to delete an element from an array for your code, it goes through and talks about the unset value, how to unset a value within an array. So you don't need a reference book today because of Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow, for a lot of development courses, are actually being replacing textbooks. And so tons of helps for whatever language you do right now besides PHP. Say it's Java, say it's HTML, jQuery. Doesn't matter. If you use Stack Overflow as your source for questions, it's going to help you tremendously on anything that you have. And what's great about it is they've got multiple answers. Some of them you'll like, some of them you won't like. Some of the examples are easy, some of them aren't so easy examples. But I found out that you'll find one answer that fits your needs for the most part. And then what's great is once you create an account here, you can actually go down here and you can actually submit your own answer, or you can ask another question that maybe somebody hasn't asked yet. Now, I will say if you ask a question that's close to another question,
Get harassed.
well, some of these guys will just tell you it's already out there and redirect you to the existing thread. So bookmark that one, stackoverflow.com. Definitely recommend that for anything programming-wise. You'll definitely love it. And I use it all the time. I submit stuff to it all the time, search for stuff in there all the time. So, okay, let's go on. We have one more page here on the PHP multi-dimension. Then we're going to flip gears to the next one. And that's it for that. Next is practical arrays. And both of these links are found in the in-class lab, the reading part. We've looked at creating arrays. I wanted to touch base, though, on array of numbers. No, randomizing. Randomizing an array of numbers. Let's talk about those two. Okay, this is really for gaming, for whatever. Say you wanted to create a PHP page for people to enter in names, and then click a button, and it picks that name out of the names you picked. So kind of like a out of the hat type thing, right? So for a party or for an office event, you want something on your website to randomly do whatever. This is where you can, it's called pseudo-randomization for all languages. So randomizing your array says very often you find yourself not wanting to read your array in a strict ordered fashion. In this situation, you need to make use of a shuffle or array rand. You might have heard of array rand, because C++ uses that as well for randomization. Shuffle's a new one, though. It's specifically PHP. Shuffle takes the entire array, whatever it is you have, say it's numbers, strings, whatever. Then it randomizes the position of the elements in there. In earlier versions of PHP, the shuffle algorithm was not very good, leading to not so good, kind of a weak pseudo-randomization. But the problem has been fixed with newer versions of PHP up to the latest version. Basically, all you've got to do is, you already know how to do an array. This one here is called natural born killers. Lions, tigers, bears, and kittens. You shuffle natural born killers, and then you do a var dump. The var dump will basically give you a kick out of those arrays. So let's look at it here real quick. It says here, one of the major drawbacks to shuffle is it mingles your array keys. It's unavoidably sadly, and you may need to live with it when you use shuffle. It says, note, shuffle uses a parameter by reference. It returns true, but shuffle it shuffles up the parameter you pass to it. So if you want to pick out just one random value from an array, you can use what's called an array rand. It takes an array to read from, then it returns one random key. And this is close to the C++ one I talked about earlier. The advantage of array rand is it leaves the original array intact, whereas shuffle messes it up. the actual array itself, the indexing of it. And then it says you use a random key to return the grab the relative value for that array. The original array that was left untouched with the array rand. The array rand has an optional second parameter that allows you to specify the number of elements you'd like to return. These are each chosen randomly from the array and are not necessarily returned in any particular order. So he goes through and says before he shows you an example, you need to be aware of a few things about a rand array. It does return a key. It returns the keys in your array. If they aren't specified, the default integer indexes are used. So that would be the 0, 1, 2, so on and so forth. To get the value of the array, just look up the value of the key. If you've asked for one random element or do not specify parameter 2, you will get the standard variable back. If you ask for more than one random element, you'll receive an array of variables back. If you ask for more random elements than there is an array, you'll get an error. And array rand will not return duplicate elements if you request more than one. So here's the easy, and plus var_dump actually can be used for, you could do an echo command here instead of var_dump. Natural born killers again, array lions, tigers, bears, kittens. It's just array rand, and then in this case it's natural born killers, and they want to kick back 2 results. So you could actually do an echo command here as well, and we'll do the same thing. Okay? And that's called array rand. Numbers is the other type of arrays that you want to create a lot of times, or need to create a lot of times in programming. And in order to do that with numbers, it says here a problem: a school has been given all of its students end of year examination. The test consists of 40 questions for each student. To minimize cheating, the school wants those 40 questions to be randomly ordered. A lot of online quizzes do this, by the way. By default, you can turn on this randomization. So code-wise in PHP, basically you have your question equals array 1, 2, whatever, 40. You shuffle them. Shuffle, and then the name of the array, in this case it's questions. So it's going to take that array, shuffle them in a random order, put them into the question array, and reinitialize them to the new shuffled order. Says here a slightly smarter programming might save themselves some typing more intelligent like this, doing a for loop for I equals 1, while I is lesser than or equal to 40, it's going to keep incrementing by 1. All right? And then it's going to keep looping through those questions and shuffling them. Goes on and it says, however, there's still not the most efficient way to do it. Instead, PHP was called a special range function that allows you to create an array of numbers between a low value and a high value. So you have like a parameter 1, parameter 2, parameter 1 low, 2 would be high. In other programming languages, you might see them as min and max values. Like in VB, it's min and max, same in C++. So it says here that the best way to do it is use range. So you have questions equals range 1, 40, 1 comma 40. It's a lot easier, not as much typing. Then use a shuffle again. Shuffles that question array into and reinitializes questions to those shuffled question numbers. So range, it says here, returns the array between 1 and 40. It's very inclusive, ordered sequentially. Then it's passed through the shuffle to get the random numbers. Perfect. So there's 3 other tricks to range you should be aware of. First, you can use a third parameter that allows you to step by the amount in the range. So you can, you did this last week, I believe, when you did the step through on the for loop and the if, I believe. So in this one, you can say, okay, I want range 1, 10, 2. 1, 10, 3. So in this case, it's going to increment by 2 and then increment by 3. And then the last one, range 10 to 100 and increment by 10. So the third argument for range is what you're incrementing that by for the range itself. So that's one trick to do. And it says that although the step parameters should be positive, the second trick is if you lower the parameter parameter 1 is higher than the higher parameter, you get an array to count down from highest to lowest. So if you do the opposite, 100, 0, 10, it's going to go from 100 to 0 in increments of 10. So that's a nice way to do it. Same in characters, A to Z. If you wanted to range A to Z, 1 increment, or you wanted Z to A decrement by 2, you can do it that way. So that's just a few examples I wanted to show you that I thought was, out of all that reading, the most one I want to kind of highlight. Now I want to go to the in class for week 6. It's not a lot of files, but the structure for it is pretty simple. So this allows you to upload a file. There's a PDF file here for that. And so basically it's got, talks about how it's very useful in PHP to be able to upload files at times. You wouldn't want to put a secure wrapper around this page for folks to, so that wouldn't just anybody be able to get to it. So you could secure it that way through like authentication and securing it like we talked about in the last couple weeks. So once you say they've logged into a member site, they have part of the member site pages is an upload page to upload their picture for their profile. That's common, right? We have that in all websites, so from Facebook to Twitter or whatever. So it talks about the HTML code part, which you've seen this part already. It's a post command form, basic HTML. The new is a form type. It's an ENC type, encapsulated type, is multi-part form data. Its action, it's going to go to a file called uploader.php. The input type's hidden, max file size, value is roughly 100 megs. And then you choose to upload it. And in this case here, I take it back, it's going to be millimeters, it's going to be 10 megs, 10 megs. 10 megs. 100,000 megabits per second would be 10 megs. Choose a file to upload, input type, upload file name, you need that when it goes to the post. It's a file type, submit button. So let's talk about this. The first one is the encapsulated type. This is necessary for PHP to say, okay, this is a file you're getting ready to upload. The next is the action, pushing it to the PHP page. Post informs the browser you're getting ready to send it to the server using post. Then the input hidden name, and also setting the maximum size. The input name, upload file name, is just what it's used here in the example. It could be called whatever. So you choose a file to upload. It redirects the uploader.php. The PHP file is going to process the form and do the work. So let me run it locally before we talk about it. I'm going to run the local host one, I think, first. Okay, so here's a local host version on my Mac. I'm going to go to week 6, browse out, and it says there's an error. It doesn't tell you what the error is, it just says there's an error. Now I'm going to go to the external site, browse out, grab the same file on my desktop and upload that. And I think I had a file out there with that name already, and I think I didn't delete it, so yeah, it'll upload it anyway. And if I go to the inside of week 6, you do have to create whatever folder you put this in, you have to create a folder called uploads, and where it uploads those files. There it is, and there's the PNG file that I just uploaded. So go back to the PDF file here. There it is. So what we do is, in the HTML part, I'm going to plug this in so you're ready to die. In the HTML part It basically determines, before you push it to the PHP file, determines the file size for the server. But remember, it failed on the development side. The reason it failed on the development side is uploader.php, or the upload format in PHP, only works on external for testing, does not work on development, and that's for security purposes. So if you want to test an uploader function, you have to do it on your external site. Code is the same, it's just basically a security purpose for development. So now that you have the HTML, the PHP, you could get some error for some reasons here. One is the file's too large, you don't want to have it on your server. You wanted the person to upload it, to upload a picture, but they uploaded something else like an executable. You can block file types, by the way. And then there's problems uploading the file, so you can't keep it. So on the uploader.php file, when it's executed, the uploader file exists in a temporary storage area, and that's where the problem comes with the development platform. You don't have that temporary storage area. It doesn't give it to you anyway during development, where it does give it to you if you're accessing it from outside coming in. And by the way, that's the only few limitations for developing locally is uploading. Everything else, you're fine. There's some other things too you'll find out, like when you get to week 10 and 11, when we work with some of the profiles, manipulating profiles, it only works externally as well.
I
But
was able to upload locally.
do what now?
I was able to.
Were you able to get yours locally?
Yeah.
Okay.
I use man. I don't know if it makes a difference or not.
It might. With XAMPP, you can't do it locally. You can only do it externally. It might be a man. Do what now?
My PhD, admin,
Yeah.
upload.
Yeah, you can do it that way through PHP admin, but the directory itself, the default directory for XAMPP for local development doesn't allow you to do it. But it might for MAMP, you're right. It might allow
Yeah,
it. Was,
yeah.
It does. Turns it
I
on.
was able to put it in temp and then move it to a permanent
Yep.
directory.
Yeah, and there is a php.ini file you can change for development. I just never do because I always test it. I want to make sure it works on live. So yeah, but you can definitely, there is a php.ini file that you can turn on for development to work in XAMPP, but out of the box it doesn't.
You can't upload to 000 web host.
Right, right.
Which is unfortunate.
Yes, yes. Okay, so in the files uploaded name, it grabs that, it grabs the original path. It also has a temp name, the uploaded file, which basically is a temporary file path that it creates on the server, and uploads it to that directory that you've called it to. And so let me show you real quick on the code for this. It's not real difficult here. And this is actually to the week 6 lab, and this is the uploader.php. Here's my path, uploads. Target path is uploads. Base path is a file that comes in, whatever that file is coming in from, desktop, whatever. This next if statement says if that file exists and it's moved, you move it from the upload or the temporary server upload to the target path, it'll say that file, whatever the name is, has been uploaded. If there's any error whatsoever, it'll tell you the error, or say just you want to put some type of, there's an error uploading it. You can actually change the file size here to whatever. So if I bump this up, I don't think I've done the development key on this one, but let me see here. Let me bump it up to something larger here. And save it. I don't think I changed the ini file on my local development. We'll find out real quick if I did. No, I didn't. Okay. So anyway, I have it on my external set that way. The XAMPP installation at home, I have it turned on. So let me go back here. So the code itself needs a path for the upload, and all you've got to do is, I'll show you my path on my directory here. on my Mac in the development. Back one. Okay, so here's Web 290, Labs, week 6, and there's the upload folder in here. And just make sure it's in the root directory of that where the HTML and PHP is, and make sure it's around a secure wrapper of some type on your site, because they can't upload anything. Now the other thing too, as far as limitations of safe practices, I'm going to go over here to PHP file upload, type, php.net. And actually in here is where it shows you how to modify your INI file to upload larger files than by default. So php.net manual here for uploading files. I wanted to get to the actual file types. Here it is. You can actually put it in a switch statement to determine what type it is by the MIME type. Like this example just shows if it's a JPEG, it kicks out as a JPEG. If it's a GIF, a GIF. And then default says file is an image, but not a GIF or a JPEG type, or else it's not a valid image file. So in this case here, it determines from the result of the upload. In fact, they hard-coded some file.jpg in there as the upload. But on the switch type, MIME type here, if it errors out, or the else path on this would be if the result errors not equals false. There's actually a PHP function called getImageSize. GetImageSize, when you pass it a file name, which would be including the path and everything, and put it in a result array, if it's here, if it's not equal to false, it's going to be go here. If it is equal to false, it's going to go here, all right? And meaning that it's not an image file at all. It could be an executable, it could be a zip file. So most websites for PHP, this code here, actually from up here to up here, this whole function here, you could actually use to limit, say, a JPEG or a GIF file that you'd want to upload only to a website and get rid of any other junk, or like an executable or zip file or whatever the case may be. There is a link here, I won't go to it, to the function getImages that supports other image types as well. That'll show you examples. And then also they have other types of prefixes that you can add to your file size. So say if you wanted to increment it by megabyte, gigabyte, terabyte, petabyte, you can do that, which I doubt if you'd ever go that high. Then the max file size is an important one in here. It says max file size hidden on the form field. It says here PHP has somewhat strange feature checking multiple maximum file sizes. And it talks about actually in here manipulating your INI. It was a bug actually originally in PHP, but they fixed it in the newest version of PHP to where that problem's gone. All right, but it was a bug prior with newer versions that has been fixed. But this is a good, if you haven't bookmarked this site as well, hopefully you have, because I think it's one of your bookmarks anyway for the course, is php.net manual. Gives you all the different types of code examples that you need. And it even has an example in here for uploading multiple files. So you do use it periodically in PHP sites, so it's good to know how to do it. The example is here, source code's here as always for the lab. Now let's go over the take home. You're going to be reading a portion of text online. In fact, this scrib.com document, page 23, read and complete the exercise from below. It says do not download the exercise if it asks you to, there is a download link here for the zip file for week 6 exercise. So when I click on this page, should bring me to page 23. Going right into the exercise working with loops. And it says it's 10 or 15 minutes. Basically what you're going to do on this one is read this example here of flow exercise loops, and it says under the while header use a loop to output to 100, but you've already done that one I think last week. But as you keep going down here, it gets into the arrays, color table arrays, the one I want you to do. This color table array where you have a single table using a single array, then you also have associate array. Keep going down here further. Two-dimensional array. No. Too far. It's right after the multi-dimensional. No, we'll stop right there. This one here, basically, the file it's showing you here, the color table, is, do not do the download, by the way. There's a zip file here. The zip file, if you download it, we'll go and do that, gives you the example code of what you need. And while that's downloaded, all I'm going to have you do is look at the index array and associate array part on that reading, and then you're going to add different color arrays for both is what you're going to end up doing. So let me go ahead and open up that download real quick to show you what it looks like. Oh yeah. Thought I downloaded it. Too many files. There it is. Okay. All right, so color table.php and color table2.php is the files we're going to be looking at. And W3 School, like I have it in there in the actual code. If you go to W3 Schools HTML color names, actually if you just copy that URL and bring it into your browser, gives you all the known hexadecimal names for colors within HTML. So you're going to pick colors that are not in the download version and manipulate it to your own. So this first one basically is just an HTML or PHP site with HTML in it on the front end. That's color table, and then it's got an example of looping through the color table 1 and looping through the hexadecimal color table 2 with 2 columns. Same on this one. You need on the color table, create an array that holds your favorite colors and then outputting it. So the first one's single dimensional, second one is multi-dimensional. And I've already downloaded the source, so let me show you the source example. So we have in this, and notice you can use the names actually of the hexadecimal. In this case, it's Blanche Almond, Cadet Blue, Burley Wood, Dark Olive Green, Hot Pink, Papaya Whip is for the single dimensional. And since we only have one column, we just need one for each loop. Okay, one column, one for each loop is all we need. Loops through them. On the multi-dimensional, we have in there, again, fave colors, but notice we've got Blanche Almond equals, and then the actual hexadecimal 6-character hexadecimal number for all of those that we had up here. It loops through those on the for each loop, echoes them out, but this time it echoes out 2 columns, a key column and an item column. The key column is going to be the name, Blanche Almond. The second one's going to be a hexadecimal color. So let's look at the final results on that one. Go back to the example link. So this one is the same color on both columns, column name, hex code. So you're just adding to it. But all I need you to do is put in different colors for the top one, which will be the single dimensional. Second one, different colors, but also make sure and put the correct hex code in there as well, because it's going to be referencing that hex code in the loop when you're doing the echo statement. All right?
If you wanted to select a specific item, how would you do that?
If you wanted to select like one of the rows,
Yeah.
well, for fave colors, if we wanted to select any one of the fave colors, we could actually fave color and then the name of the color we want to echo out. So if we wanted to just say, I'll just put in here an echo statement, and we want to put in.
But let's say it was within the for each. So let's say you have an array, right? You have brought in some information,
Mm-hmm.
and you're let's say so. Let's say you're pulling in like a Facebook feed or something like that. You're
Right.
gonna have a profile image.
Yep.
And you're gonna have a link to the post. You're gonna have the text. So you're gonna have to select different pieces of that,
Mhm.
put it into different locations. How would you do that within the for each loop? Would you have
Well, an example for that one, actually, from what you're asking, I would say this here would be a good example of that. Let me open up, actually, let me see if I can find it here. I think it's this one. Here's a good example. In fact, we go to, let's close all this stuff out. Because this does use arrays, but it opens up from a database. But it should answer your question, hopefully. So let me open this up real quick. Okay, this is the actual guest book one, okay? And I want to focus on the edit link for the guest book. What I mean by that is, let's go there real quick. It was 3, okay. Okay, so this column right here, this is all did a select statement from a query from a database. It comes in and it uniquely isolates, in this example, one of the items in those arrays, and the item I want to isolate for this one is the ID to the record. Okay, in order to do that, all you do is, as far as code-wise, this does the same thing actually that we've been doing. It uses though what's called just a while loop only, and loops it out with what's called a fetch array, which you could do it though with anything. It could be whatever. It could be if you wanted to isolate, for instance, on the example we just did, a certain color, you could actually do an if statement within the while loop. If that color equals whatever hexadecimal value, we're going to display it. Or if that color, in this Facebook example, if that user profile username equals cconkle, you're going to show that user profile's information on the database, if that makes sense. But you need to do an if statement within the while loop, or one we've been looking at tonight, the for each loop, and you can do that because you can isolate within a for each loop an argument for what you're just talking about. You can either do an if statement, you can do a case select, where you do have a certain case select structure. So like if you want to plug within a range or something. So there's a number of ways you can isolate that information. The way it does here is when you click on the index, it brings it over, I believe, into, what is that, the form on that one, contact.php. Contact.php, I'm sorry, edit.php. The edit.php comes in and it gets a select statement again, blows it up, and it isolates just that number that was captured, which would be that record for that row, and then puts the content of that record in that row. So for the array we just went over, it could be, say it was, you want to isolate a color example from the color name and the hexadecimal name. You can put an if statement. If it equals this name, this is the only one that's going to show up on the table. That's it. By one simple if statement, you can do that. You could also do it with, I would say an if statement would be the best one to use. Another one, case select. A case select would work if you wanted multiple, if there could be multiple true statements. Case select would work, right? But if you're only one true statement, meaning your example was like Facebook, it would be like profile ID, which I'm guessing they have unique profile IDs tied to each whatever. So they do a select statement. In that select statement, it reads the database. And you know, like in Facebook, you can click on different tabs to get to different things, like I don't know, high school information, or workplace information. As you click on those tabs, it's actually querying your record that you already have open, querying that unique record, just like this is doing. It's querying just that unique record for, like, say, in this case, would be if they're on profile for, say, work history, and you click on a tab for, I don't know, we'll say likes and dislikes, it would actually query it by that and sort it by that. If that makes sense. And pull the data for that. So yeah, you can basically whatever logic is that works for your app, you can do. And basically within a select query, which you would use in that case, you would query the select statement, blow it up in an array, and then use whatever key for those unique areas to bring in that data, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so you have your profile data, work history data, likes, dislikes data, whatever else they have in there, tons of stuff. So does that make sense?
Yes,
So you
it
basically
does.
query it by the ID in that case. But arrays would still be used for it throughout. And so all I need you guys to do for this week is play with arrays for your take home. And if you want to add in more than just colors, that's fine. If you want to play with other columns besides the 2 columns, which that one has, you can do that. If you want to add a second or third or fourth or fifth or sixth column, that's great. Just for, you can play with it and put in there, say you might want to put in there, I don't know, instead of just colors, you might want one of the columns to have a hyperlink going back to the, W3C web page where that color exists. That could be a challenge if you want to do that. And so, because you'll notice when this app runs, it's got 2 files in it. Actually, the one here just has 1 file that runs for the project. Go there. It's just index.php. And when it pulls up the HTML part of it, in the PHP part, it's getting the array information here. In the table part, where it starts with a table beginning and ending, notice it's grabbing the background color with the TRBG color equals color. If you wanted to have one of these columns be an AHREF, you could do that as well, easily, by just instead of echoing out TRBG color equals color, TD color, whatever, it would actually be using BG color, be using a hyperlink reference. And so when they click on that link, it takes them to that page. And so, again, you could do another for each loop in that for that one. And that would actually be applied to this one down here. This is a single dimensional one, but on the multi-dimensional one, in the table there, it's really simple. Right here, it's got a color name, hex code name for the header information, and then it's blowing up in a for each loop the row information with the BG color key, and then it has in there the key name and the key item. So you could actually add a third one if you wanted to, another TD for the hyperlink. You could add hyperlink on there as well. Easily add that in there. And then basically in your array, you have to come up here and add another area for your array for the multidimensional item. And on that one, we already did that. It would be a comma, whatever you want to call it, in brackets, equals, and then in single quotes would be actual URL to that reference you want to go to. So you don't have to do that, but that's a challenge if you want to do that. And looking ahead real quick, we're coming up pretty quick, believe it or not, on your final app. And let me make sure of something here. Because I opened this up on the rest of the courses. If I didn't on this one, I will open it up. Let me look here real quick. Okay, let me make sure. Yeah, I did. I opened up the course for you guys on the modules. The prereqs are unlocked now, so you can look ahead. We are in week 6 now, but next week we're going regex. Regex allows you to do such thing as filter to make sure that validation for emails and websites are in there, or numbers or social security numbers. Error handling week 8, string manipulation and input week 9, PHP profiles week 10, image galleries week 11. Then starting week 12 all the way through week 14 or 15 actually, you're working on your presentation, your final presentation for your website. And then on week 16 we're presenting in class your final presentation. Okay? And so kind of looking ahead, I did unlock those for you. So I would suggest starting to implement. You've already submitted your idea as far as your website goes. In fact, on week 12 is the actual official homework for submitting that, I believe. Let me look and make sure I put that in there. I think I did. Yeah, on week 12, you're basically going to submit the type of website. But we're in week 6 now, so it'll be here before you know it. You're going to submit in week 12 your website, whether it's going to be a business or personal site, and begin working on it. And then I have links here to prior examples of websites that students have done. It's actually linked back to Eagle. Prior examples that students have done, and so you'll be able to look at those. In fact, I still have those on my website from last semester. On the left side is the prior examples that show up over here. I've just numbered them. So your guys will be updated as I get that information for that, whatever that final site might be. And so as you go in weeks to come, probably a good idea to be thinking of your final site, what it's going to be, what it's going to, in the past they've done everything from, one student last semester created a recipe website, one student created a hot rod website of different images they uploaded of classic cars, and then information when you clicked on it. Another student created one for the workplace, for a module for uploading files, I believe. And so, just be creative, something you can actually use. I definitely want you to create. And so that way when you're done with the class, you actually, something you can utilize. Like this student actually the wife just had a baby 2 weeks before the final presentation, and he posted her photos of the baby on the website. So, so anyway, that's week 6. If you have any questions, come up and see me. Otherwise, we are done for the night. And that's okay. Stick around a little bit if you want to.
Which language?
I was going to put some stuff up, so if you can remember, come up and ask me. So.